Evening. Welcome back to the Ask Me Anything with Dr. Twyman. I'm a board certified cardiologist and I help you avoid heart attacks and strokes. I practice as Apollo Cardiology. We're located in St. Louis, Missouri, and we work with patients from all over the country and the world, including Australia 3 times. I think we're at 48 out of 50 states still looking for Vermont and New Hampshire. So if you're from one of those 2 places, let us know. We'll add you to the board and so we can hit all 50 states. So for the past few years, been doing these Ask Me Anythings on Monday nights. Submit your questions ahead of time, first come, first serve. If there's time, there usually is. If you have a question that you want to ask, drop it in the comments. I'll try to answer those as well. If you're looking for more Ask Me Anythings, my archives are on the YouTube channel, drtwyman.tv. I just updated a few from June over there. And then my hour-long or more podcast, or I should say my lives that I do in my school community. The archives are there since I've been doing them. There's a free 7-day trial if you want to check out my school community, Becoming Heart Attack Proof. Just shared an article about nattokinase that I wrote. And then also there was a recent article that just came about caffeine and coffee. So caffeine from coffee, up to 5 cups, might be good for some people. But I had my spin that you probably want to check your CYP1A2 gene to know for sure. So if you're looking for more of those details, check out my school community, drtwyman.com/school. So with the housekeeping out of the way, we'll jump into the questions. First question up tonight, why is a high CAC, CT coronary calcium score, a concern without a statin? It's a marker that you have plaque in the coronary arteries. Your score should be 0 forever, but the longer you live, the more likely your score will be above 0. You just want to be as late as possible. And I've said many times, I've seen patients in their 80s with scores of 0. I've seen patients in their mid-30s with scores of nearly 1,400. A score of 400 is considered high risk. A score over 1,000 is very high risk. I've seen scores over 7,000 in my career. But a rising calcium score test, not a concern with a statin? Well, think about what are you utilizing the statin for? Yes, it's going to lower the lipoproteins, but it's also lowering inflammation and it's stabilizing plaque. That's the main way to think about utilizing statins. Is that you're taking the soft plaque and turning it into more firm calcified plaque and stabilizing it. So oftentimes your calcium score test will go up if you start a statin in the interim. So that's why I generally do not recommend repeating calcium score tests once they're above 0. If your score is 0, repeat it maybe in 3 years. If your score is above 0 and you want to know is the plaque getting better, you're probably going to be wanting to do a CT coronary angiogram, particularly with an AI overanalysis for it. Because a CT calcium score test going up on a statin generally means that the plaque is stabilizing, not necessarily that you're getting worse. Do I recommend a grain-free diet? To certain individuals, particularly those with genes that put them at risk for celiac disease, or if they have Hashimoto's, I will often recommend it, but not for everybody. Some people do tolerate them. But if they have unexplained inflammation, they have unexplained arthritis, migraines, GI issues, definitely should consider cutting out dairy, gluten, and corn. Next question, what are my thoughts on daily low-dose Tadalafil for cardiovascular support? So that medicine is what's known as a phosphodiesterase inhibitor. Its job is to prevent nitric oxide from breaking down. Nitric oxide is a critical molecule that helps dilate the arteries. It lowers inflammation. If you don't produce nitric oxide from exercising, eating green leafy vegetables, and the nitrate-reducing bacteria break it down into things that become nitric oxide, Tadalafil won't work for you. So it only helps keep around nitric oxide that was already produced. So there are some studies ongoing that look at Tadalafil for other things other than erectile dysfunction. They're looking at for benign prostatic hypertrophy. They're looking at it for Alzheimer's, because if you can improve blood flow to the tissues, things get better when you get blood and oxygen in and waste products out. Side effects of Tadalafil can include tinnitus, ear ringing, back pain. It can cause headaches because of the vasodilation of all the arteries, so not everybody can tolerate it, but it's an interesting adjunct. But I always tell people, they got to fill the funnel first with nitric oxide by exercising, eating nitrate-rich foods, and being outside in the sun and getting UVA exposure on their surfaces. The UVA light liberates the nitrates from the skin. question, do I expect olpasiran to be available soon for prescription to lower lipoprotein A? No, I do not. I think 2027, 2028 is the expected timeline, but it will be the second lipoprotein A lowering drug that's likely to be released. The first one will be inclisiran. They've already completed their phase 3 trials, the Horizons trial. It was expected in the first half of this year, which we're obviously past now, that they would announce the results from that trial. So we're expecting it almost any day now. If they announce a trial to be a positive trial, meaning less major adverse cardiovascular endpoints, less heart attacks, strokes, need for stents, dying, the drug will get approved by the FDA and should be available by the end of the year or early next year. And then the last pre-submitted question. So if you guys have any questions you want to drop in the comments, now's the time. So the question that was submitted was, what are your thoughts about the newly approved LDL lowering medication? I think it's called Lipfendra. I never can pronounce the new drugs the first time around, but it's an oral PCSK9 inhibitor. Currently, the PCSK9 inhibitors are injections. So Repatha, Praluent, inclisiran. So the new medication affects the LDL receptors. The LDL receptors sit on the outside of the liver, like docking stations, and they're grabbing the LDL particles and getting them out of the circulation. The drug will just make those receptors stay out longer because the enzyme PCSK9 won't degrade the receptor. The oral drug that was announced last week from Merck lowered LDL cholesterol around 60% at 24 weeks. So the FDA is going to give it approval. It should be in the pharmacies in the next few weeks. I saw that the initial pricing is about $10.50 per pill, so about $350 a month out of pocket. Unclear how much insurance coverage there will be for this, but the medication is more cost-effective than the injections. The injections generally, when they first came out, were $15,000 a year. Then they dropped about $5,000 a year a few years ago, particularly after Nexletol got released. And then Repatha has a direct-to-consumer program for $300 a month where insurance isn't involved. But if insurance is involved, it's usually somewhere $500, $600 per month. The medications work very well, but in the past, it used to be a cost issue for some, or it was getting over the hurdle of giving yourself an injection every 2 weeks. Now that the oral form will be out, some people will be interested in switching or starting. But I always put a caveat out is that this drug is new. There are no outcome trials for it yet, meaning no trials have shown if you take this drug, you don't lower your risk of having a heart attack, stroke, need for stents, or dying. The important things, just lowering a number on a lab form doesn't necessarily turn out to what you want in real world. So for the most part, with my patients I work with, I probably would recommend that they stay on Repatha if it's working for them for the time being, and only make the switch later if it's a cost, concern, or they just can't really get, going still with the injections when they know that there's an oral option available. So I think it'll be a kind of a game changer long term. It's really just going to be the cost at this point. Seeing a lot of familiar faces here. All right, so we're waiting for some comments to drop in. I'll answer them as they go. For those that are joining, we do these every Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, Monday morning. Put a box up in my story, drop your questions in. The background of the picture today was my expansion to Apollo 2.5. So Apollo 1.0 was a one-room office that we set up at a co-share place back in 2019 when we went to launch this practice to help people avoid heart attacks and strokes. As my now office manager, Cassidy, that was with me at that time in a one room, and we figured it out. Once we kind of figured out the plan, we expanded to a new location, 1,300 square feet, but we're starting to outgrow that space, particularly after we brought Dow on board, and we're doing more and more vascular testing. So we're adding another testing room. We're adding a room to put our 8-foot long red light so people can do photomodulation in the office again if they're interested to charge up your mitochondria. This thing is literally the beast. It's 8 foot by 4 foot tall, and it was designed for a 6'8" hockey player in the NHL. So if you want to charge up your mitochondria quickly, check out this panel. I'll take some pictures of it once we hook it back up. And then still debating the back corner, potentially putting in a podcast studio, because right now I just do it in my main office, but maybe I want to have a little bit different backgrounds, and looking forward to at some point in the near future being on a podcast and going over somebody's clearly analysis, going through all the different vascular testing. So be on the lookout for that one, because that's basically going to be like a deep dive into how we actually take care of patients at Apollo, what testing we're looking at, what labs, what genetics. We're going to do all of that on that podcast. So going to talk to that person probably later tonight, get it set up, and then once it's announced, I'll let you guys know about that. All right, and then one last question I see is, what are my thoughts on colchicine daily for cardiovascular risk reduction? So this was the Lodoco trial, 0.5 milligrams of colchicine. It lowers inflammation, mainly because it's lowering uric acid. High uric acid can directly damage the endothelial glycocalyx, which is the protective lining to the arteries. If you damage that protective lining, you're set up to potentially have endothelial dysfunction, vascular inflammation, and further plaque buildup. So in the Lodoco trial, they showed that if you added colchicine on top of optimal lipid-lowering therapies, antihypertensives, aspirin, people have less MACE. So if you have high risk, colchicine is a good option, particularly if you have high uric acid and inflammation. All right, so a question about peptides. So any new research on peptides, like I assume this is like teslamorn and retatrutide. So teslamorn, not as much data that I'm seeing, but retatrutide, it is going to become a FDA-approved drug in the near future. It's likely to be more potent than the current available GLPs. And the main benefit of the GLPs for cardiovascular reasons is that it helps the glycocalyx and the underlying endothelium release nitric oxide. There's data that there's GLP receptors in the epicardial fat, the fat that surrounds the heart and the coronary arteries. So it potentially will shrink visceral fat. That's just now starting to get looked at. I actually have access to an AI system where if you take a CT of the person, you can estimate how much fat they have around their heart. So maybe something interesting that people can get a baseline of how much visceral fat they have on their heart. Start their retatrutide, repeat the CT, and see how much the fat around the heart shrinks. My suspicion is that it'll be a significant amount, and that will decrease vascular inflammation and probably will decrease cardiac events. There's already data with semaglutide. There's trials ongoing with tirzepatide, and then eventually they will have cardiovascular outcome trials with retatrutide. All right, guys. Well, those are the questions for the weeks, it looks like. My archives are in the Instagram feed, but if you're looking for older ones, I did just update a few over on my YouTube channel, which is just drtwyman.tv. Check it out if you want to see some of my older stuff, and I used to put some of the longer form content there. But all my newer longer form content is in my school community. Free 7-day trial if you want to check it out. But I'll be back next Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time. Hope you guys have a great week, and let me know if you need anything in the comments.